Hello.
Test.
Hello, hello, hello. Say hi if you are here in the chat. I also did not notify any group. Give us a moment here before we get started.
Do you ever get nervous, like doing it live?
Nope.
No.
Because I feel like I have the perfect amount of I don't care
Mm,
when it comes to this.
I get that.
Live mixing music streams are only for subscribers on Twitch, right? It's also available on YouTube. Hold on. Frick.
Nice.
Okay. Hello, hello. Say hello if you are here. What's good, Crossbone T? Okay. Requests queue. What?
What's that?
Don't know. I didn't know there was a request queue. What?
Heavy Japanese accent.
Yeah. There's a lot of different things that you can do, but
Have you done any of those?
yeah, I have. All right, well, let's get started. If we see any comments on YouTube, I don't know if we'll be able to see it. Anyway, this is James. Say
What's up?
hi.
Hi, ¿qué pasa? I'm James.
All right. What? Why does it look like that? Why does it do that? Okay, whatever. Okay, we're gonna get started. We have an episode. Can you read my handwriting?
It's interesting. Your handwriting like looks good, but like it's hard to read.
If I try, I can make my handwriting look good, but most of the time, I can't.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Sounds good. Do you want to like? Are you gonna be the one listing off the points, or do you want me to?
Yeah, I'll do it. I'll take the lead. Okay, hello. How's everyone doing? Let me turn down the volume of the music. Even more. Okay. Let's get into this episode. I'm recording here. I'll be recording here as well. Okay. Hello and welcome back to the Mix and Music Podcast. I'm your host DK, and today with me we have a special guest. If you've been listening to the exclusive episodes, then you know who this guy is. This is James Parrish, but he goes by James Dean. James, welcome to the show.
What's up? I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, you're gonna want to scoot up right up on that. Like, kiss that mic. Hello, James. This is literally. We are live right now on Twitch and on YouTube. So if you want to judge the way we look, come do so by subscribing on YouTube. Yeah. James is currently transitioning to be the new host of the exclusive episodes of the podcast and swapping out with Braden. Braden is, well, he told me he's going to be starting school, but we'll see if he actually does that.
Yeah, we don't trust him that much.
And Braden, so James will be taking over the exclusive episode, and today Lou is feeling a little sick, under the weather. So I asked James to come join me on this episode for this special edition episode with James Dean. We're going to talk about 5 misconceptions. So maybe something along the lines of 5 reasons why your mixes suck. Those sort of titles, clickbaity titles, always do really well. I don't know why. But these are more like misconceptions, things that intermediate, even advanced, or especially beginner engineers, there's a lot more nuance to this stuff than people give credit. And we're going to talk about 5 different things that may be keeping you from doing your best work. And these are things that we all have to learn one way or another. I don't think these are hyper crazy. I think some of them are interesting, and some of them might change your perspective a little bit. I think one of them specifically is going to not piss people off, but it's going to be the exact opposite of what you've probably been learning your entire life. And I'm really, really passionate about it, so we're going to talk about that. But we're going to start off really easy. Number 1, first misconception of mixing is being afraid to do too much. Now, I do think that people often do too much. Like that is something that does happen.
Yeah.
And then there's like a level that you get to where you're starting to get good, and then all of a sudden in the intermediate phase, I feel like people start to kind of turn into being afraid to do too much.
Yeah.
When did you find yourself in that position, James?
I think it's easy to get into that because we hear the phrase overprocessed a lot. Like, oh, that sounds overprocessed. And I didn't realize I was in a way doing too little, because it was that pendulum. I used to do too much, and then I started doing too little. And then the first time I came here and sat in a mix that you did, I noticed, I think you're doing it was a home recorded vocal, and it was super harsh. And I noticed that you had a bunch, probably 5 dynamic EQ spots, all on one vocal in one spot. And my instinct was at first man, he's doing way too much. But then you were A-Bing it for me, and I was like, oh no, that just sounds a lot better. And so I noticed that since then I've, how do I put it? I've kind of relied on my ear a little more after that to be all okay, this still doesn't sound okay. I'm okay to do another EQ band if it makes it sound better. That makes sense?
Yeah. Also, while you were talking, I realized this is the first time everybody's meeting you. I didn't properly introduce you. Because I'm we've done a bunch of episodes together already on the exclusive. James is a mixer, just moved out here to LA, longtime listener of the pod. Is a good mixer. Is a great mixer.
Oh.
Shitty human being. No, I'm just kidding. Is a great human being. And I think has a lot of valuable insight as well. Currently works with us at In the Mix Studios. Sorry, I should have said that before we started. I just kind of glossed over it. Yeah. Everybody's like, "Who the fuck is James?"
Yeah, that's me.
I still don't know. Who the fuck is James? I don't know, but. Anyway, we're I think that's a really good point. You've seen me mix, and
yeah.
Granted, I will say that still, even now, there's many times where I do too much, and then I have to dial it back. I don't know if you've seen me do that yet, but there's moments from time to time where I have a bunch of things going on. For example, in an EQ, specifically an EQ, where I have way too much going on, and then I'll have a sudden backtrack and be you know what, this is way too much. I think I can do all of this with a single band rather than with 3 bands, you know?
Yeah.
I don't need to boost just this shelf here or just this bell here. I can do a shelf.
Yeah.
And or whatever. Or do the similar ideas, but with different slopes and shapes with less moves.
Yeah. I think it could be kind of easy to almost trick yourself out of not listening to your ears. I don't know if you've experienced that before, but like you would like look and like be like, oh I don't have enough plugins on here, and you almost feel like you have to do it, or you might have too many. But like I think it could be easy, like tempting to like feel like, oh, I can't do another move because it might ruin it.
I will be totally honest here, and I'm not trying to like flex or anything like that,
No,
but
it's
like I'm at a point right now, and I think this is like a point that everybody should strive to be at, where I'm genuinely not thinking about how many plugins I'm using or not using.
Yeah.
I have an end goal sound in mind,
Yeah.
and if it takes up 10 inserts, it takes up 10 inserts, and I don't even think about whether or not I should feel bad about it. Now, I'm not saying that I'm better than anybody because of that. I'm just saying that, like, I think what you should strive for, like, the level beyond this misconception, right? So, like, sometimes you're afraid to do too much, sometimes you're afraid to do too little, but I think the point of this is the ideal, and I hate to use myself as a good example here, but the ideal is, like, if you're a good mixer and you trust your ears and you've proven to yourself for years that you know what the heck you're doing, then I don't think how much or how little you do is even a thought that you have. It's rather just the end goal in mind.
It sounds good, and that's kind of what matters. Yeah.
So yeah, but I mean, when I'm like EQing and stuff or whatever, I'm also like, I have an end goal in mind, but I'm also oftentimes experimenting what the best way to get there is.
Yeah.
So like I might add points on an EQ, I might compress with a different compressor, but you've also seen me just like totally remove the plugin and be like, oh, that's not working at all.
Yeah, you're like, yeah, no, not that. Yeah, exactly. I've seen like even like Jesse Ernster, like I've seen him, he would still experiment too. So it's okay to sometimes not know exactly what it needs and experiment, but make sure you like A/B and see what's actually better.
Yeah, and the form of experimenting is different, because I feel like in a beginner, experimentation is more based on how can this sound better.
Yeah.
Where like when more experienced mixers are experimenting, they already know what sounds better, what they want. I want more punch, I want more thickness.
Yeah.
But they're just experimenting how to properly get there that's best for this source. Right?
Yeah.
So the experimentation is different. But I do think that I think you do have to go through the valley of overthinking before you get past the point where it's like it's just total flow state.
Yeah. No, yeah, I get that. It's a matter of like being more comfortable and confident, but it's hard to get there.
I don't know about you, James, but for me, I think getting through the valley of overthinking, right? That's a good way of putting it. But getting through that, I think it's just 100% practice. Like it's just the time.
Yeah.
Maybe like, I mean, from proving to yourself through like clients approving hundreds, if not thousands of your songs over the years.
Yeah.
Knowing that you're the shit, getting paid enough, I think that making enough money kind of reflects how you feel about yourself too.
Yeah.
There's like a lot of different things, but I do feel like that just comes with time.
Yeah.
And I think people are too impatient.
No, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. It's easy to get frustrated. Yeah, like it wasn't until like very, very recently that I started feeling like that. When you gave me that like first bit of mix revision for the group that we do, and we do like a little mixed feedback.
Yeah, you want to talk about that?
Oh yeah, we do a mixed feedback group at the studio. Pretty much anyone there will. DK will give us stems to do a practice mix every week, and we'll get together and get feedback. It's been great. If you could find a way to get a group of mixers together wherever you're at,
hold on. Do not start contacting me to ask me if you can join this group. I'm not doing it for y'all.
Yeah.
It's only for people that are basically assisting me.
Yeah.
In that
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah, no, this is not open to everyone as much as we love you guys. It's not that.
It's like James and one other person. Like that's it.
But it is super helpful to find a group though. But what helped me with that was really when you heard the one mix I did and you're like, oh, like this is really good. Like this would be a perfect mix one. For some reason, just getting that like external validation from a mixer I respect, as a mixer, not as a person. Then
what the fuck are you trying to say, James?
I'm kidding. I respect DK as a person too. But for some reason, since then, it's helped me to not really second guess as much the moves I make. So yeah, I guess. But that also does come from like time of working and getting to the point that like the mixes are good enough for you to say that. So, yeah.
I mean, I had the same thing. I do think the validation does come over time. I think it's sad that we need it, but I mean, I'd be silly if I said that you don't need validation, because even I started the podcast, started taking my craft a lot more seriously when Leslie Brathwaite validated me.
Yeah.
Right? So there's like a point in time where someone that I respect validated me, and I think that happens to a lot of people eventually. Like if you just keep working at it, like keeping your, like keep working, keeping your head down, just staying focused on the craft, and then someday you're going to get a form of validation. I mean, like Braden talks about his form of validation is when he beat a mastering shootout, and that was the moment for him. I mean, we all have egos that we need to get over, and I think that, through time, eventually, there's going to be a moment where you'll be like, oh, yeah, I am the shit, and I'm allowed to think that. I think there's like a level, this is unrelated, this tangent, classic tangent here, but like, I think you need a lot of humility to get better, and then there's a point where it takes a certain amount of humility to realize that you might be good.
Yeah.
Because there's like a point where it's like, if you're really good and you still think you're shit, there's like a secondary unspoken commentary saying that you think that everybody else is shit.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's like,
sense.
okay, what about anybody else that's not as good, that's working hard?
Yeah.
It's like, are you saying that we're even worse?
Exactly.
Because you think you're shit, so it's like, it's okay and borderline healthy and practical to think that you are good. Not just for the sake of yourself, but for the motivation of those around you as well. Anyway.
Yeah, I think the word is meekness. Do you know that word, meekness?
Define meekness.
My understanding of the word is the best way I heard it explained is power, but with precision. So, like a big attribute of meekness is being humble enough to know that you could grow and improve, but also recognizing your strengths and powers and being proud of them.
Dude, I looked up what is meekness in the dictionary on Google, and it says the fact or condition of being meek. Thanks.
There you guys go. Meekness is being meek.
Submissive. Submissive. Interesting.
But okay, so that could go into, though, I guess it's more of a tangent too. Part of that submissiveness is being able and understanding to be able to learn from anyone. So not only people that you see above you, but like from people who are new to or people who are younger, you are open to learning from them as well.
Cool. I'm also just cool to like come up with a brand new definition of meek too.
Yeah. But yeah, anyway, that's at least what I think about it, is like it's not being prideful to be like I'm good at what I do. I think it's being meek, of being like I'm good and I have something to offer people.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, I do. It takes a certain amount of meekness or humility to recognize that you're good.
Yeah.
Accept the compliments. Okay, number 2 is, this is an easy one, low-hanging fruit here. Compression does not equal punch. Now, I don't know why, but there's a lot of people that think or like default put on compression on drums or whatever because they want the drums to be punchier or to be thicker or something like that. There is something to be said about how density, specifically saturation, can create like density. But that's not punch necessarily, and I do feel like I've seen far too often people naturally just gravitate to opening up a compression plugin or using a compressor of some kind, almost by like default. By default, and they're like not even listening for it. I understand that compression is difficult to listen for. But I also think that if you want to get better, you have to take the mental effort to bypass it, to really experiment with it a little bit each and every time, and fully confirm that you like the way it sounds.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. It's, I'm trying to think. For me, I guess talking about punch usually means drums and stuff. I tend to default to like the rubber band compressor that Jesse Ray has.
I like that one a lot.
Yeah. But sometimes I'll like really get into it and dial it in and be like, oh, this sounds so cool, so loud. But then after A-Bing, I'll realize, oh, this kind of lost its like thumb. And so I think it doesn't always mean that like it'll make it punchier. So it's good to just make sure you test and compare, and it could be something else that's causing the drums to not sound as good. Yeah,
and I think it's partially like attack and release times, obviously. So fast release times is more sustained, slow release time less sustained. So if you got a snare and it's only happening every quarter note or every like half note, right? Anyway, and then and there's like a hi-hat bleed in it, like slow down the release and then you'll get less hi-hat.
Yeah.
But you'll also get less sustain in the snare. So And then if you have like a slow attack time, you get more of that initial transient, like 30 millisecond and above, you get more of that transient. But sometimes the punch that you want is not an increase in initial transient. Sometimes the punch is an EQ thing. Like you want more lower mids. I feel like the body of a snare, the body of a guitar, like that. Sometimes it's like low mids is where punchiness is. So it's a frequency thing. It's not necessarily an amplitude dynamic thing. I think people just necessarily like kind of like default to compression. And I think compression is a super dope tool. And I think that it's just difficult to understand, difficult to hear. So people just put it on without thinking, and you're never going to learn how to hear compression if you just keep putting it on without thinking.
Yeah, a practice that I've done that you guys could try out. I think you said you don't do this. I don't remember. When I was trying to better understand what different compressors were doing, is to set like the output gain so that it's technically dB wise the same level before and after compression, so that you're really just only hearing what the compression's doing. And so I think kind of doing that has helped me to better understand, okay, this is what's actually happening, other than like the compressor plugin itself just making it louder.
Yeah. No, I do that all the time. In fact, very rarely do I use compression for gain staging. Sometimes I do that, actually. You've seen me do that too. Where like I turn up or down the volume. That's like super important. But there's a difference between like RMS versus like peak value.
Yeah.
So that's something to think about as well. But make sure that you have like, when you're bypassing plugins, make sure that it's similar volume, and not to fool yourself there. So that's another thing too. It's like, it's not necessarily over compression. It's not necessarily under compression, but like, I think number 2 is more about using a compressor, like using a square key for a circular hole.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
So it's like sometimes that's not the right tool, and I think that people need to be open to the idea that it's not working. And I think if you want to understand compression, you have to be open to the idea that this isn't helping you achieve your results.
Yeah.
Okay, number 3. This is the one that I think may surprise some people. And this is top of mind because we've been talking about it for the last week. But James taught the intern lesson last week. Was it this last week? At the studio, we have lessons for all the interns every Wednesday. James taught and basically did like a full-on read the manual for the FabFilter Pro Q3.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about what it says there. But this is specifically about linear phase mode or linear phase EQ. And we'll generalize as well, go a little macro into like anything that's CPU intensive. Linear phase EQ is not better, does not sound better, is actually worse, and is hurting your audio more than it is helping you in 99.9% of all scenarios. The manual in FabFilter even says the same thing.
Yeah, I was reading the manual, and it even like specifically said like I don't remember word for word, but it's just to make sure you know linear phase is not better. It's just necessary for certain aspects. So 99% of things that you have to do will sound okay in natural phase. And like pretty much 90% of things you have to do will sound perfect in zero latency mode.
Yeah. So even zero latency mode is potential in Pro Q3 is better than linear phase. Okay, so a couple things with linear phase is one, this is like extreme and it's very subtle. So I'm not going to say that this is like going to be make or break, but this is just unnecessary and like an example of why it's inferior in most situations. Linear phase, because EQ is a phase tool, you're shifting phase. Linear phase will try to maintain similar phase. So thus, if you have things that are especially slow, like low end, where the waves are wider, in order to keep the same phase, it's got to stretch time and stretch out the sine wave. Okay. Now, what happens is that if you have a really tight Q and you boost super high amounts of gain, so it's like, and you have in Pro Q3, if you put it on the maximum level, it creates what's called pre-ringing. Something that doesn't happen with any sort of natural phase EQ. Pre-ringing, look up on YouTube, just type in clear examples of pre-ringing, and you'll hear it. It's like if you boost on a natural phase EQ, it'll be like poof, poof, like regular punchy. But if you hear pre-ringing, it'll be whoopoo, whoopoo, whoop, whoop, and it like totally destroys the transient. Now that is an extreme case, and that doesn't happen all the time unless you do extreme tight cues with extreme boosting. But that's just something that you could totally avoid and do 4 times less processing on your PC if you just didn't use linear phase at all. So you're using your computer more, unnecessary CPU processing, and potential pre-reading issues. And on top of that, the only pro. Do you want to talk about the only pro linear EQ might have in some scenarios?
So they gave an example in the manual, and it's I don't even fully understand what the example was, but it's pretty much like there's 2 instruments and they have like a very similar frequency spectrum, and if with using the natural phase or zero latency, you make an adjustment, it creates phase issues, you would use it for that. But
there
it was like a very specific thing. So like, no, I guess it's good to know when to use it, but don't just use it because it's the most CPU intensive, in that like that makes it seem like it's doing more.
There's also interesting too, because I'm going to introduce the idea that phase is not up or down. Like there's degrees of phase, like 0 to 180. And so you can have like 73 degrees off phase, you know? So it's like, just because you flip the phase doesn't mean it's perfectly in phase. It just means that it's a little bit less out of phase.
Yeah.
So it could still be in between. So we're going to get that out of the way, that concept out of the way first.
Yeah.
For example, full drum kit. Let's say on the way in, miraculously, you got 100% perfect correlated phase shifting. You took whoever, maybe you did the editing and you got it perfectly in phase. Mm-hmm. And like, you do not want it even a single degree out of phase anymore. Okay, you might start using linear phase EQ for a single one of those mics.
Yeah.
If you've done the editing and done, but here's the thing: if everything is slightly out of phase, even if you flip the phase, right?
Yeah.
Like it's infinite between 0 and 180 degrees, right? So if you flip it, okay, you flip all the phase, you check all the phasing, the phase is good, maybe you've done edit, whatever. Even if you use natural phase and things that go slightly out of phase, like, it's probably not going to hurt it that much, or depending.
Yeah.
And if it does hurt it that much, you just flip the phase again on that single sig. So it's just like, it solves a problem that has rarely ever been a problem, and then rarely ever is a problem. This is a huge misconception. Linear phase specifically for mastering.
Ooh,
Or for drum buses.
Yeah, they've even said in the manual they've advised against using it on drums because they said it will kind of suck the dynamics out of it.
Boom.
So that's
Okay, so if you are a TikTok audio listener, and you've been told linear phase on FabFilter Pro Q3 is the sauce, is the secret. First off,
this is the secret to get Grammy vocals, and then it's just like some crazy EQ. Cut.
Yeah, no, first off, you quit being so susceptible to marketing. Like, please be independent. Like, have your own thoughts, okay? There's a clear example that in that moment you were a follower, because I guarantee that if you went back and forth and tested whether or not linear phase versus natural phase was better, you would have not noticed a difference. If you were actually honest, you would have been like, oh my gosh, there's no fucking difference. Okay, that's the first step. Number 2, it's not even close to true. It's not even a little bit true. It's not even a little bit true.
Yeah.
So avoid it at all costs. So that is a huge misconception. I don't know where that started. I mean, this is like just Google, is linear phase EQ better? There's mastering engineers have huge forums where they're like, no. Or like, yeah, it's like this really weird thing. It's like, it's just in general, avoid it.
Yeah.
Number 4 is the importance of the rough. I want you to share your stories about like the feedback things, and like,
oh yeah,
because like most of the time, because first off, with the feedback group, the mixed feedback group that we're doing, I'm not responding as DK the mixer. I'm trying to do my best to give feedback based on if I was the client.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. There are a few instances. A huge thing that's, I think, amongst everyone in the group, and the main feedback that we get is like, you did this too different from the rough, or something like that.
That is a very common theme.
Yeah. And especially for things like, how to describe it, like those random instruments that come in for just a verse or just a chorus, and like you don't know how in the mix they want it. I feel like the reference mix is a good indicator of how present they want that instrument to be. But I think the best example of this that happened in our feedback group is There's like one, it was like a digicore song that you had us do, and I did a mix, and it was essentially came down to like you wanted to get louder and you want to match the genre. And DK even told me that as an engineer and like from his personal taste, he likes my mix a lot more, but what the customer would have wanted or what the artist would have wanted and how the genre sounds itself, it would not have sounded good in that genre. It did not match the genre that well. And
the artist's taste.
And the artist's taste, yeah. And so in that sense, I strayed away from, even though I think a lot of people would think that it's better, it's not what fits inside the artist's taste. And the artists themselves probably would not have liked that as a mixed one.
So this is interesting. This is like the idea that like at the end of the day, mixes are super subjective, and this is why communicating with a client is almost more important than the ability to mix, because your ability to mix is mostly like, honestly speaking, there's a part of mixing. The craft of mixing is like how well can you be a chameleon? Like think about if Manny Marroquin, who mixes for let's say, Post Malone. He mixes for Post Malone, and recently he did like the Kendrick album. Let's say he started mixing both of those like he mixes John Mayer.
Yeah.
Because he really, really likes the way John Mayer sounds like.
Just super clean, and that would not
really
that would
dark,
not match.
Really dark.
Yeah.
Really like low volume. Like low, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, no, that doesn't work. A good mixer, like if the mix is good, nobody's thinking about what the mixer did.
Yeah.
Like even like an engineer, like if the mix is good, even an engineer who's listening to the song won't think about who mixed the song.
Yeah. No, exactly. Like that also reminded me of like there's this band I was mixing for, and they kind of did more folky kind of music, and I had a version of the vocals that I thought sounded so much better than what they wanted, and I almost tried to because I had two different versions of the vocals and stuff, and they wanted the other one, and I kept on trying to kind of put elements of the vocal that I liked more of that way of mixing it into the one that they wanted, and they kept on sending it back for revisions. And so like it's almost like my ego and what I thought made it sound better, all that did was make the process longer instead of just listening to them and what they wanted. It's their song at the end of the day.
That's interesting. Yeah, no, and that's a big deal. And at the end, so here's the thing. I want to redefine that conversation. At the end of the day, this is reality, and this is how you should be thinking about this as a mixer. I personally, as the teacher, as DK, thought that your mix was good, but it was in the wrong direction, which means it was bad.
Yeah.
Does it make sense? So it's like that is like the part of mixing, like mixing, like being a good mixer, having a clean mix, that ability to mix is only a very small portion. And that ability means nothing if you're unable to be a chameleon. Like if you're unable to change the style of mixing, what is best for the client, what is best for the genre, and understanding, like as a mixer, it's our job to be like analyzers of music and to honestly customer service again, like just to provide that service. It's not like a product that you just pick out beforehand.
Yeah,
you may have a little bit of taste, but like honestly, like your sound, the sound that you might have is partially, this is so weird to say, I'm like testing out this idea. If you have a sound as a mixer, that's just a byproduct of your inability to mix.
Interesting.
So like you have a sound because you're unable to conform 100%, nor should you conform 100%. But like if you were a perfectly great chameleon mixer, like Serban Gane, what is Serban Ganea's sound? To not touch the fucking mix. That's his sound. Like he doesn't, like he's got a clean thing, but like every single one of his mixes sounds so different. Like what is Manny Marroquin's sound?
Yeah, good.
Yeah, it's good.
That's all.
That's all it is. It's like,
yeah.
And for me, like my sound is typically like louder with like more aggressive drums. But that's like, I feel like that sound, like, which it can be a good thing, especially if you know what you're getting out of, is also my weakness.
Yeah, I think what can make you good is you could have your sound, but then you have to be humble enough to be willing to let that go if it's what they want. I remember Jesse Ray Ernster like posted this mix, and he was like, "Oh, the perfect mix doesn't exist. Oh wait, it's this one," like saying it was the perfect mix. And I was driving with Ashley, my wife, and I was like, "Oh, I want to listen to this," so I played it. She was like, "What's this?" I was like, "Oh, apparently it's like the perfect mix." And she was like, "Well, isn't the perfect mix just like what the artist wants?" And so like
Ashley is his wife, by the way.
yeah, that's
James'
my wife. Yeah. I don't know, that like when she said that, that kind of put perspective in my head. I was like, I guess that technically is like the
Yeah, I
perfect mix.
assumed that Jesse was being sarcastic.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, and I bet it was an amazing mix and stuff like that. But I know, yeah, I think it's something to like think of like, in a sense, the perfect mix is just what the artist wants themselves.
Of course. And this goes into like the reason why I'm mixing practice stems doesn't work is because you can get better at the craft of mixing, but you're mixing into a void. Like without a customer. So this is why the value of free work is always better than practice stems, because you have someone that's putting the pressure on and is approving your project. You have someone, which is most of mixing. Like the ability to manipulate audio to do whatever you want it to do is only a part of the craft. The real craft of mixing is using that skill to do whatever the client wants.
Yeah.
So in that case, like I don't know, there's this like weird misconception that it's just like, can you make audio do what you want to do, and like that's the most important skill. No, it's the most important skill is actually communicating and understand what the client wants and stepping in the same direction that the artists want to step in. I will say though that from my personal experience, the less you charge, the more the less experience that you have. I don't want to say lower quality, but like that's not the right word, because there's some really high quality stuff out there that on like a very local level.
Is it like they don't know what they want kind of thing?
I think like the less experienced people are, the more they're gonna push you, and like okay, I'm just gonna say it like this: the higher up you go with mixing, the more experience you get, the more important projects you get, the bigger clients you get, the more money that you make. They want you to do less and less. It's like the most counterintuitive thing ever.
Yeah.
Because if they have the budget to hire a more expensive mixer, that means they have the budget to hire or participate with like better songwriters, better producers who are a lot more thoughtful with their arrangement and mixing before you even get it. And so by the time you even get it, it's not even demoitis. It's that the fact is it already sounds fucking great before you even touch it as a mixer. So it's like now they just want that approval.
Yeah.
I mean, this is something that specific to, I think I brought up like talking about Serban Ganea, right? Who, by the way, is like the number one. He's like kind of secretive. He doesn't really go out in public or do like mix with masters or anything like that.
He's not present on social media.
Yeah, but he's like the number one mixer in the world as far as like just like data goes. Like how many Billboard number ones he has. And I've had the opportunity to listen to before and afters of his mix, the rough mix and the mix afterwards, and it's like surprising. It's surprising how little it was different.
Yeah.
It was like, I think it's slightly tighter, maybe.
Yeah, that's crazy. That just kind of shows he just has a very good ear to make those very minute changes.
Yeah. And has a great understanding, like, and honors. I like to use the word honor. Honors the work of the producer and the work that was put in before.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's something you said in our group too. Like you said, it's like, it's almost like a compliment to them when you say like, hey, I actually didn't have to do too much. Like it sounded good. It's
really counterintuitive because you feel like if you're getting paid so much, or if you have this much pressure, you have to do more.
Yeah.
But nah. Like the best compliment is to honor them by saying, no, this is great, and I did very little. Actually, a specific example is I had a producer friend of mine, Gavin, who's a stupid good producer.
He's way good.
He's really good. I love anything he sends over to me. There's this one artist that he sent over a band of dudes, and the artists themselves are like, I can't hear a difference. And Gavin's like, no, it's definitely tighter.
Interesting.
He's like, this is definitely better. And like, he was really happy with that.
Yeah.
And that was enough to win him over, to win the artist over.
Yeah.
And he felt really respected.
Yeah.
From the conversation that we had, if I remember correctly. So it's I mean, that's the problem that I have with mastering engineers. Like I've had way too many issues with underexperienced mastering engineers.
Yeah.
That don't understand that, like, we do things on mixers and producers, the people before us, and even up to me, like the artist approved.
Yeah.
Like things were done on purpose. And that's why I hate mastering engineers that do too much.
Yeah.
Because it's like, you're dishonoring the entire process up until this point.
Yeah. I think even Andrew Shepard, he said like it happens a decent amount where he'll just get the mix and all that he does is just turn it up to the, like the limit of the threshold, and that's it. Like people trust his ears enough where he's like, oh no, that's good. You're okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's number 4 is ignoring the rough and the dangers of ignoring the rough. I think the rough is a great reference. And like I do that trick all the time, what you were talking about earlier, like using the rough, listening to the rough to figure out what the role of each track was.
Yeah.
Like how loud is that shaker in the background?
Yeah.
Is this supposed to be a subtle thing in the background that's just adding some noise? Or is it like main forefront track?
Yeah.
You don't know without the rough.
Yeah. Yeah. The rough is good. Amen to the rough.
Yeah. I mean, think about this. Like you're a guitar player.
Mm-hmm.
You've written music.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine that you wrote a song with your wife and you asked me to mix it. And even if you're like, I don't like the way it sounds right now,
Yeah.
you wouldn't have sent it to me unless you got it to a point where you're like okay with it. Like,
Yeah.
you wouldn't have sent it to me if you weren't at least vibing with it.
Yeah. No, yeah, for sure. But then I would be pissed if like I really liked a certain guitar part in it, and like even in the reference I intentionally had it turned up, and then you had it like in the background and not even because you thought it filled the space better. I would have been pissed if that happened too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true. So that's something to think about. Jason Joshua, who's famous for saying "fuck your rough mix," there's a clip in Mix with the Masters on their YouTube channel of actually me asking Jason Joshua what he meant by that, and Jason actually specifically said, "Yeah, I say that, but that's basically just a marketing ploy because I actually respect the rough a lot, and that's like really important. You have to respect the rough."
Yeah.
That's literally his answer. So
Yeah, that's pretty much what he said. Yeah.
he didn't say the marketing thing, but that's I'm interpreting it as that. It's and then I think like if you do too much, that's like the job of a producer. If you are a producer, then it is within your right to change the song completely as much or as little as you want. But if you are a purebred mixer, like you're just mixing the song, don't fucking touch it too much.
Yeah.
Be careful. Be very, very careful.
Yeah. And if you do change things, communicate it. Like that's a big thing.
Actually, I don't know why we're bringing up Jesse so much on this episode. We brought him up already 3 times,
He's a
but
beast.
this is something that Jesse and I have talked about in the past. But like we do this thing where, okay, 2 points to this. If I do too much or I want to take a different creative direction, I send them 2 mixes. I send them one that's more normal, that's more like the rough, and then I send another that's like, but here's what I like, to see if they like it. So I
Yeah.
give them 2 options. And then the point number 2 is rarely ever does it ever help to even send the creative one, the one that I think is better.
Interesting.
And never have they ever, like rarely ever have they ever accepted it. It's like a big
Yeah.
risk. And on top of that, like, it's like, it's time. In fact, it's backfired for both of us. It's backfired a couple
Really?
times where it's like
Interesting.
I sent them a version that I thought was better, which basically tells them that I don't believe in your version.
Oh, that makes
So
sense.
it's just like, so they lose trust in us as a mixer.
Yeah, and one more thing I just remembered too. I know we've been on this point for a while, but like, I remember one of the mixes I watched you do. The reference had that little moment where the drums cut. Remember that, like the do 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 do. But
Oh,
like
yeah, there's,
in
like,
the
beat
stems you
cuts.
got, it wasn't that, and it wasn't until you were checking back and forth on that specific part that you realized, oh man, like that probably could have been bad if you just completely missed that whole little drum chop because it's a pretty like important beat
Yeah.
on the song.
Yeah, that's true. In that song, there was like a bunch of different chops that was important. I think with the mixing group too, like there's one song where like I didn't do this on purpose, but it was a great learning point. The intro in the rough was different. Like there
Oh,
was like copy and
yeah.
pasted for something else, or like tracks were muted, but the rough was different than the stems. And not a single person in the group brought back a mix with the same intro as the rough.
Yeah,
That's an
we felt
instant
shame.
fail. That was an instant fail.
Shame from Daddy D.
Like that shouldn't be an issue, but that's an example of like not paying attention to the rough.
Yeah.
Like if you had noticed the rough, and that was like a scenario where like if everybody had listened to the rough like and A-B back and forth enough, like it would have been really easy to duplicate it. Like it wouldn't have been difficult or tedious. It would have just been like muting something or changing something a little bit. I don't remember the exact specific details, but that's like an example of not paying attention to the rough.
I think it was like there were like weird song chops in the beginning that I guess they took out. But yeah, it was something like that.
Oh, so they just like deleted the intro or something like that.
It was something, but like it was still in the stems. But yeah, if we listened, it wouldn't have been in there.
Yeah. So like that, yeah, with the mixing group, it's all the same in the sense that you have to pay attention, and that's like the most important thing. Respect the rough. Okay.
Yeah.
Number 5, what does it say?
I was trying to read it just barely. I forgot. I was trying to read your handwriting.
It's okay to... Oh! Okay, this is actually a hot topic. I think this is really important. This is more within the lines of like music within the realm of pop. So whether it's hip hop, whether it's with country, or whether it's folk, if you're trying to make a record that is not avant-garde, but more, if you're trying to make music that is widely accepted to large audiences, that is not music for a specific niche or a specific thing, almost every single time, I do not believe that a good mix, you have to perfect anything. In fact, like perfection is something that you do not want to seek, except for this one thing that I'm gonna purposefully kind of exaggerate my stance on this just to prove the point. Vocal tuning. If vocal tuning isn't perfect every single song, it's not even fucking worth putting out. If you do not have the ear to be able to know when notes in a run or a specific small note, even if it's like a 16th note, is off, hire someone to tune your vocals. Because it does not take an engineer, it does not take a producer, it does not even take a singer. My tone-deaf, Down syndrome kid can tell if you are a bad singer, okay? And it ruins the song. Imagine a guitar solo, but the strings are off, and the guitar solo is actually the entire song. But like the tuning is off. It doesn't take an experienced musician to know that this sounds cheap and it sounds like you didn't put in the effort. Most of the time, it's like you need to have the patience to, if you're working with the artist or the singer or the rapper even, to do enough takes and to have a good ear to recognize when to do another one. Have a good relationship and humility where it's like you're comfortable saying that wasn't good enough, right? Mm-hmm. Which most of the time artists do appreciate if you're tracking. Or taking the time to edit afterwards and fix it in post, which is Melodyne is like a really useful tool. What I'm not saying is to make it sound robotic. You can perfect vocal tuning, and it doesn't have to be each note doesn't have to be perfectly centered, but it damn near needs to be close or else it's distracting. And I hear way too many amateur songs, amateur mixes where it's fucking ruined by a singer that is just not willing to put in the time to redo it, or to edit the vocals to be in tune. Yeah. It's like the most easiest way to destroy any chance on the popularity of a song.
I think that even if you are going for the natural sound, if you're practiced enough in like Melodyne, you could still tune it with it sounding natural. It doesn't have to sound
You could
robotic.
do it with auto-tune.
Yeah.
In fact, auto-tune doesn't work if you're a bad singer. So.
Yeah. I remember I think it was literally like a few days ago, there was a mix I was working on, and you told me that like with that artist, what will help their mixes so much is just going through and pitch correcting everything. And so I went in and did that, and it made the mix so much better.
Literally, it's not even an EQ compression thing. It was literally just tuning the vocals.
That's like, I'm pretty sure that's all I changed, and then I it sounded so much better after that. So yeah, sometimes an out-of-tune vocal, even though we want to sound natural, it could take you out of the song. I
swear on my life, if you leave a vocal one note out of tune just because it sounds more under the guise of more natural, you are the most amateur piece of shit I know. Like, I know that's like a really extreme, and I'm generalizing and exaggerating to prove a point. The shock factor. But I want you to be that serious about it. Like, it really ruins songs. Again, it's the most important, like with most songs that have singing on it, it's the loudest and most important feature. Again, it's like a guitar solo, but throughout the entire song, and Guitar solos don't have words that you understand, that emotionally connect with people. You're not letting the song even get an opportunity to connect emotionally to the person. If it's not in tune, get it in fucking tune. And it's literally an effort thing. And if it's an ability thing, like you're unable to hear it or unable to do it, it's really cheap to hire a vocal tuning person.
Yeah.
I can give you someone that can vocal tune for affordable amount. I can DM me if you need someone like that.
Yeah.
I am so sick and tired of hearing great songs, great mixes, great productions being ruined by a lazy ass vocal.
Yeah.
Lazy ass vocal.
I feel like even if it's just the first few words that are out of tune and the rest is in, that's like you're already taken out of the song.
Oof. Oof. It is so lazy. It's so, and I'm using lazy on purpose because it's most of the time not an ability thing. We have the tools to fix them, whether it's previously or in post.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that ruins a song. And dude, it's the difference between having a record that sounds local and cheap and having a record that's like competitive with Beyonce. It's a lot of the times it's just tuning.
Yeah. No, yeah, exactly. There's an artist that I've mixed for, and he was very much like, I don't want the vocal tuned. And I kept on trying to like secretly do it, and he just did not want it. And at the end, like I was like, this is a good song. I still mixed it and stuff, but like I just remember like leaving that project like it would have sounded so much better if it was in tune. It was a good song.
I will say though, in the last 4 or 5 years of my mixing, ever since I like stepped it up, and doing mixing at a higher level,
Yeah.
not a single person has asked me to not do that.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
In fact, I've had other comments like, hey, can you tune this one actually? That's pretty common.
Yeah.
It's like, can we tune this just a little bit more? It's a little bit too natural. And that's the thing too. It's like you can keep, again, you've already brought it up, but with Melodyne, with Auto-Tune, with other tools, you can keep it sounding natural. Like you can tweak the settings, but it's not about keeping it natural. It's about making it not distracting.
Yeah.
That's what it's about. It's about keeping it not distracting. A bad mix is a distracting mix.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I cannot get over it. The only time I've ever had someone say that, like, can you keep it more natural, like tune it less, is people that, and again, I'm like being really mean just to prove a point. People that went nowhere, were going nowhere, and it was helping me none at all.
Yeah, I think it's like a similar thing to like just getting mixed revisions and stuff. Like at the very beginning, people usually don't know what they want, or they think they know what they want. And so you will just get like random things like that. But it does seem like the more experience and the more like higher caliber of artists you work with, it's not, they won't request those things anymore.
I will put into perspective Ariana Grande, who is a fantastic singer. Mariah Carey, who is an amazing singer. Still both use tuning.
Yeah.
And if they use tuning, you better fucking use tuning because you're not even close to Ariana Grande. Not even close, I guarantee it. I don't even give a shit. It doesn't matter. It's also often like with rap music is especially dangerous because like right now, I mean, it has been for a while, but like with trap, there's a lot of like singing rapping.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to tell you right now, there's a few songs that are popular that did well where it's like you heard the producer say that they put the autotune in the wrong key and that's what worked for the song. That is so uncommon and such a exception. You don't do that. Don't do that. I'm not saying that you need to go to school and learn theory, but oh my gosh, I'm so passionate about this because I think it ruins songs. It's like the lowest hanging fruit. This is like the most basic thing that everybody could be doing.
Yeah.
It's not difficult. I don't think everybody has the same ability, but it's not difficult to find to do it yourself or to find someone to do it or to set your up. If anybody's learned anything from listening to this podcast, it's that I don't like putting up barriers to make people feel more insecure. Like I'm not in the business of making people feel insecure. I'm here to provide tools and to provide understanding to help you feel more accomplished, more assertive, to feel more ready to handle what's ahead of you.
Yeah.
Vocal tuning and me calling you lazy is like the one exception. I hope you feel insecure. Like, feel so insecure that you're gonna spend 3 hours tuning your vocals. That is the bare minimum. Like, this is the one thing that I hope if too many of y'all are not insecure enough about that. It really is. Such a waste. Such a waste.
Yeah.
Such a waste.
It makes a difference. It definitely does.
Yeah, because like the songs are good.
Yeah.
And then I show my sister, who's like not in the music industry, and she's like, "Why are the vocals out of tune?" I show my wife, she's like, "Why are the vocals out of tune?"
Yeah.
Like they can't even listen to the song.
Yeah.
They're like, "Whoa, this is obviously an amateur." It's like the fastest way to find out if someone's an amateur.
And I feel like even people without like amazing pitch, it's usually just like you can just tell something's off, and they can't put their finger on it, and that's a lot of times the case.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They can't put their finger on it. They can tell something's off.
Yeah. It's just like, this doesn't sound professional, and then that's usually what it is.
I don't give a shit how well you dial in that drum kit. Vocals are out of tune. It sucks. The song sucks. All right. I'm trying to think of an example where like it's okay to leave it out of tune.
There's like very specific like but it's like intentional, like a thing. Like sometimes an artist will go between notes to get like a special sound. But again, that's more of an intentional. That's not like a bad.
So accidentals?
Yeah, accidentals.
No, you still tune to the center of that accidental pitch.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. It's a very specific song.
Microtonal? Like it's like more like Indo-Persian, Middle East, Indian, where it's like microtones, where it's more than just the 12 semitones. Yeah, that, sure. We can also go into vibratos. Vibratos, sometimes if they're perfectly centered and they're equally go up and down, it can sound a little off.
Yeah.
But that just takes a good ear. Yeah, I can't think of a single example.
There's one I remember. I like watched a video where they were talking about why they did it, but I don't remember the song at all. So yeah, that's such a rare exception.
So rare.
Yeah.
Rarely ever. If you think, is this song the exception? I'm going to tell you right now, no, it's not. It's not the exception. If you had to think about it, it's not the exception. All right.
That makes sense.
I think that's it for this episode. Sorry, I got the linear phase in the vocal tuning.
It's heated.
It makes me. It's just so. I'll say it. It's so stupid. It's so stupid. All right. That's okay. Whatever. Make good music. I want y'all to make good music.
Yeah.
I want y'all to do your best. I'm sick and tired of hearing really good songs just like not being given the chance by the general public, and they get like 12 streams because like the first note was out of tune.
Yeah.
It's like, what a waste. That song was so good.
Yeah.
It was such a good. The song was so good. Oh, the first note was off. Nothing. 12 streams, 13 streams.
Yeah.
2 monthly listeners.
Yeah, a little, yeah.
Or it's like 200 monthly listeners, and then the next month is 2. You know, you'll lose all of them because they listened to it once and realize, oh yeah, that was shit. And then they, oh man, so sad. What a waste.
Yeah, and again, to emphasize, it doesn't have to be, when you pitch it, it doesn't have to be like a perfect like snap and then you'll like do that thing that lowers the waves or whatever, but like you do still want it to be pitched.
I will continue to use the word perfect. I think it does need to be perfect, but I think perfect is subjective.
But yeah, only Jesus is perfect.
Okay, shut up. All right.
Does DK disagree with me on the internet?
All right. Okay. That's it for this episode. James, any thoughts? Any other thoughts? Do you have closing remarks?
Closing remarks.
Closing thoughts?
I think everything that we talked about is something that people could apply and do. So I think find something that we talked about today on this list and find out a way to be better at that, because I think these are pretty important things to work on.
Yeah, these are huge misconceptions, and there's a lot of nuance to all these things. So just be open-minded.
Yeah.
And try things. If you think that I'm wrong, that's awesome. That means you thought about it and gave my idea a chance, and you discovered that it's not working.
Yeah.
Except for vocals. You're fucking wrong if you like vocals out of tune. You're just wrong. Okay. On that note, thank you so much for listening. If you are interested in listening to more episodes of the Mixing Music Podcast, more technical, shorter, easier to digest episode with homework assignments given at the end of them, go check out mixingmusicpodcast.com/exclusive, where you get access to 3 times the amount of episodes, 2 extra episodes every single week.
Mm-hmm. You get to hear me more.
Yeah, 2 extra episodes every single week. talking about technical tips on how to improve your mixes, masterings, productions, everything, all that jazz.
Yeah.
So mixingmusicpodcast.com/exclusive. Thank you again to our sponsors. Go to mixingmusicpodcast.com to find out. Get discounts on Sweetwater, Plugin Boutique, FilePass, Canva, and many other offerings that we have from all of our sponsors. Thank you to our sponsors, including Loudon Audio as well. Appreciate y'all. On that note, happy mixing, my friends, and stay saucy.
Nice. That was fun. A good time.
Easy.
Easy.
Oh, shoot.
What?
Lou. There you go.
Yeah.
Okay, 2 more audio tracks. Can you do one more?
Do one more episode?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you want to do? What do you want to talk about? Any requests? Yeah. Hey, what up, Evan? If you're still here, yeah, we'll take questions now, just not in the middle of recording.
Let me think.
Yeah, tuning. I'd rather have an over muffled, like so impure, non-perfect vocal production. As long as the vocals are in tune, I don't
Yeah.
care how muffly, dark, or over bright it is.
Yeah.
I'd rather have a very poorly mixed vocal that's perfectly in tune
Yeah.
than a very well mixed vocal that's out of tune.
Yeah.
10 out of 10 times.
I feel like I misworded it at the end. I meant to say like on there, but like what's the tool where you could drag it down into like tie-ins the vibrato? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, the not pitch bend.
Pitch center? Is it that?
No,
It's-
not pitch center either. What was it?
Yeah, I was trying to say like you don't need to do like that like perfectly on center.
Pitch drift.
Yeah, pitch drift. That's it.
Yeah, it doesn't need to be perfectly on center. Yeah, that's what makes it feel really auto-tuned, like robotic. I'm gonna
Yeah.
put this couple in real quick.
Can you fill my bottle?
What? Fill it, you said?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll
make
try
a
to think.
conversation with anybody that's there. Crossbone team.
Other people on here? Oh, thank you, Crossbone T. We're trying to think of something for the next episode. If anyone has some ideas to throw out, we've bounced around the idea of talking about internships, like my experience here, and like also like what DK usually looks for in an intern and what works out. Yeah, we're trying to think. Oh, is there a Q&A today? I might, I'll ask DK when he comes in. Because, yeah, that could be super useful. We've also bounced around the idea of, like, maybe, like, what it's like being out in LA, moving out here. Because I've been out here for almost 3 months now. But, yeah. Is there a Q&A today?
Yeah, I was saying, like, not during the recording.
But,
But I have an idea. What about an episode about 5 things that we learned watching other mixers?
Ooh, okay.
So
I like that. Is it like we'll bounce back and forth giving one, or
sure.
Yeah?
Yeah.
okay?
Because I have a few things that stuck with me from the various people that I've watched mix.
Okay. So should we do 5 or should we do like 6 so it's 3 and 3, or what do you think?
We can do 5 and do 1 each as
Alright.
well. So it's like I probably like I have at least 3.
Yeah. With at least 2.
I have 2 for sure.
Okay. What are they? Just so I don't have the same ones.
Not overthinking from Leslie,
Mhm.
and intentional small moves from Bob. Um, let me think what else.
Hmm.
And I want to go surfing.
Gosh, I'm drawing a blank.
You.
What?
No, that I'm getting a lot of replies from for a story from my
Someone's
race yesterday, and I
Uh.
posted my heart rate. I like averaged 185 beats per minute with like a max of like 195, and I said, "It turns out I'm not fast. I just have a high pain tolerance."
Is that a lot?
Oh yeah,
Yeah?
it's usually like 60 to 180. It depends on your age
Interesting.
and like your exercise level.
Yeah.
Yeah, 185 is higher than average already, and then maxing out at 195 and sustaining that for a full hour is
Yeah.
fairly insane.
Okay. That makes sense.
Like that's the same amount of like heart rate if you were like if a regular person were to sprint for 30 seconds but sustained over an hour. So like my heart was putting in the work as if I was sprinting for an hour.
Interesting. What does that mean
Basically.
then? What does that mean to you?
It means that I have a high pain tolerance because it was definitely hurting the entire time. But I was like, no, this is only an hour. It's only an hour of pain. I can handle this.
Yeah.
It's 47 minutes of pain. I'm sorry. Sub 50 minutes of pain.
Very manly minutes of pain.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm just getting a lot of like, people are like, good God.
Oh man,
What is wrong with you? I love those kind of comments.
yeah, I'm drawing blanks right now. I had one that about just like replacing. It's okay to replace drum samples. Yeah, I've seen you do that, and it made sense as to why you did it. Is that something that you would say to them, or no?
What?
Like, if you're replacing a kick, would you say like, "Hey, is it okay if I replace this kick?" Or would you usually
It depends
just
on
do
my
it?
relationship with that artist and also how dramatically I'm changing it. Like,
Okay.
like one thing that I do is like if I malt or duplicate the track
Yeah.
and then I change the sample of the malt and I blend it in to give it more attack, I'm not really changing it.
Hmm.
I'm like basically EQing it.
Yeah.
But if I'm like completely replacing it, yeah, I might.
Okay.
The only person I ever do that for is like Caden,
Yeah. Yes, I saw you do that for
Who-
him.
who like continuously picks really shitty samples. I don't know why. At least he doesn't pick like default stock Logic kick drum samples, which sounds
Yeah, those are gross.
horrendous.
Ew.
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 Yeah.
Gross. Dang, dude, I'm drawing a blank right now.
And this is also like it's the idea of like people that I really respect in different ways.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm good. I got 3.
You got 3?
Yeah.
Okay.
If you can at least do 2.
We've already talked about tuning, so I don't want to bring that up again. Hmm.
Is it okay if I start the episode?
Yeah. It'll come to me eventually. Yeah.
Okay. I could probably think of another one too while we're doing it. Here it is. Episode number 2.
Okay, I got one.
Hello and welcome back to the Mixing Music Podcast. I'm your host DK, and today with me is my lovely co-host James Dean.
Que pasa, y'all?
James, again, I will reintroduce you properly this time.
Yeah.
James is currently transitioning to be the host of the exclusive content, swapping out with Braden. James is a mixer and recently moved to LA, has been a longtime listener of the pod, is a good friend of mine as well. And we are not recording any audio. I gotta fucking start this fucking shit over. Hold on. Piece of shit and fuck. Hold on. I forgot to change the inputs to be our microphones. All right.
That's so uncomfortable. Oh man.
Hold on, here we go. Okay. Test. Okay.
Yeah, we're good.
Hello and welcome back to the Mixing Music Podcast. I'm your host DK, and with me today is my temporary co-host James D.
Okay, pasa, y'all. How's it going?
I will properly reintroduce James and give him the credit that he deserves because I forgot to do that till midway through last episode. But James, this new guy here, this new face, this new voice, James is currently transitioning to take over the co-host position of the exclusive episodes, which you can get access to via mixingmusicpodcast.com/exclusive, where James and I and Braden break down different mix techniques, production techniques, mastering techniques, and talk about why it's effective, why it's not, and give homework and advice to help you make better songs, to level it up. It's all 100% technical. They're short, they're concise, and we take techniques and quotes from other accomplished engineers and producers, so it's really great.
All while having fun along the way.
Yeah, we're talking a lot of shit, to be honest. It's
Some
mostly
good
us
fun.
talking shit and then like a little bit of tips. And then James is a great mixer. He's moved out here to LA recently. Longtime fan of the pod. Is a good human being.
Oh.
Blah 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 blah. You should listen to his advice, and he has a lot of great insight as well. I think that'll be different from mine, in a good way here. Okay, so today's episode, you probably read the title, is an interesting one. We haven't done this as well, because usually it's about me and Lou, right? It's usually about what you learn from us. But in this sense, I think this will be a good one. Like, I want to talk about 5 things that we learned watching other people mix. And for me, these are like pretty career-changing moments. Kind of like epiphany moments for me. Just like, I felt this like changed the way that I mix forever and the way I thought about mixing forever. But whether it's huge or whether it's something small that was really helpful, we're gonna, between the two of us, talk about 5 different things that we've learned watching other people. So yeah, I'm gonna start us off here, and this is the most, probably the biggest thing that I've ever learned from anyone. And I've had so many episodes, including an interview with Leslie Brathwaite, who is one of my mentors. Leslie Brathwaite is an awesome engineer, an awesome human being. Just look up his credits. Just look it up. He's basically like he's definitely has the throne as a mixer for trap music. Like, especially out in Atlanta. Atlanta became a hub for hip hop music, partially thanks to the efforts of Leslie. He's the GOAT. He is the GOAT. And one thing that I learned from him, watching him mix, is the beauty, the importance of not overthinking shit. It's impressive. Like, at Mix with the Masters in France during that 1-week seminar, I asked the leaders of the group, like the owners of the company, the other people that were watching him and have watched other masters, quote unquote masters, come to the studio to teach mixing concepts. I asked them, how is Leslie compared to everybody else? And it was really interesting. One of them said this specifically. He's like, there's 2 sides of it. One, I'm so impressed because Leslie's mixes always sound so great. Number 2, I feel really shitty because everybody else has been talking about how complicated mixing is, and like Leslie's just shitting on everybody else by doing such good records with like the least amount of complicated processing he's ever seen in his life. Which goes to the value, like, I really believe, and this is like, again, like having Leslie as a mentor, this is just the way that I like to think. This is how I stay mentally healthy as well, and because I can't allow myself to overthink. That's like really unhealthy for me because it's very cyclical. I don't want to get into that cycle. So one of the things that I've learned that helps me make better mixes is to not overthink the process, to do what you think sounds good. I know that I'm basically just quoting, who's the producer's name? Oh man, don't overthink shit. Who says that? It's oh my gosh. You know, you're like yelling at me. If you're listening to the pod, you're yelling at me for forgetting the producer's name. Oh my gosh, his face is in my head. I can't remember. Anyway, oh, this is gonna burn me so bad. Don't overthink shit is Kenny Beats. I can't believe I forgot Kenny Beats for a moment. Anyway, Kenny Beats.
We apologize.
I'm just like quoting Kenny Beats right now. Don't overthink shit. Keep it simple, right? Just have fun with it. That rings so true for me to this day. I think that's part of the secret of my sauce. Like, I feel like the reason why my mixes are, if it's better than anybody else's, it's because I'm way more in tune with the emotional connection of the song. Like, I feel like I have the same gift that everybody else, which is I like music. I love music. And I make sure that anything that I touch or I mix is something that I would love listening to, that I can enjoy as a fan. And that is more emotional than it is technical. And my technical skills, like EQing, compression, is only there to provide more emotional enhancement. I know that's like weird, hard to understand, because that's like every intermediate to advanced level like tip. And I think that's really hard to understand when you don't know what the tools do. But once you kind of figure out how to use your tools, that changed the game for me completely.
And if you want to see a visual example of what not overthinking it Leslie style looks like, he does live streams on YouTube. It's actually pretty cool. He'll play Xbox and like do Q&As. But he did one where he showed a session for a Cardi B mix he did, like Cardi B, one of the top artists right now. And it's insane to look at how little like plugins he has on there. Even some, like, he uses like the stock EQ a lot on Pro Tools just because it works for him. Yeah. So if you want to like actually see what that looks like, you could go check out his stream. But it's true, he uses so little.
And I wanna voice the obvious elephant in the room. I'm gonna mock some people here. Oh, but Leslie works on such a high level that he only receives really good stems. Oh. Bitch, that makes it harder to mix. Imagine getting stems that already sound good.
It's scary.
That's so intimidating. Imagine if Leslie and I got bad stems. We would still outmix you, so shut the fuck up. It's not about whether or not you get good stems or not. It's about you overthinking shit. You're overthinking it. No. Getting good or bad stems, I mean, sure, it can make or break the song in general, but as a mixer, for like the small part of the puzzle that you are, like if you're a producer and mixer, then it's partially your fault, because like I think arrangement has more to do with it than like the mixing. Yeah, and like sometimes it feels like producers are really just trying to set you up to fail. Like it feels like that sometimes. I had a mix last week where like I was like, "Yo, you can do a better job than this." Like,
yeah, and
like I don't want you to over rely on me. I know you have a bomb ass mixer, but I don't want you to over rely on me.
Yeah,
and like that does happen, but that's no excuse. I still think that's, if anything, like that's an even more dangerous situation where it's easier to overthink things.
Yeah, I guarantee that even though he's top tier, Leslie still every now and again gets poorly recorded stems.
Oh,
and he makes them sound great.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I'm not even gonna get into that. Yeah, for sure. In fact, anyway, I'm not even gonna tell that story. That's my first one for me. Like the importance of not overthinking it. It's not even about not overthinking it. It's about staying true to the part of you that got you into music, which is your genuine love for music. And that like emotional reverberation that you get in the soul, like the echo in your soul that you feel when you hear a good song. When you understand that the purpose of a mix is not to make a mix sound good, but the purpose of the mix is to make the song translate, to make the song feel good.
Yeah, and the better part of like not overthinking it and being decisive is you'll also mix faster, so you won't lose sight of what you wanted to do in the first place. So, because I feel like it's pretty easy to get burnt out if you're mixing a song for like hours and hours and hours. So yeah, being more decisive and not overthinking it could help you mix faster too.
I agree with that. It's for me, that's like the one. If I had one lesson that I wish I learned earlier, or like the one lesson that has affected my mixing the most, it's that. And that's difficult to do. Like, it's just something that you have to continue to work on. Like, in order to be able to stop overthinking, takes quite a bit of confidence, takes quite a bit of practice, confidence that comes from practice and putting in the time. Maybe it takes a little bit of like having that affirmation, that like someone telling you that you're good, you know?
Yeah.
Whatever it takes, like, to like, you know, start trying your very best to not overthink shit.
Yeah.
And be true to your original childlike self. The really pure side of you that just loves music.
Yeah, you almost have to like proactively practice not overthinking it, and it eventually becomes easier to do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. So that's my first one. Do you have one?
I got one, yes. Okay, one that I learned from watching both DK and Lou and like other people online mixing is that it's okay sometimes to replace with like Trigger or other plugins drum samples if their sample just sounds bad. Would you agree with that?
Interesting. You've seen other people do it too?
I'm trying to think. Colin Britton, he does it. He has this whole trick of how to tune your, and he does that with like live drums.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do it all the time, but I feel like I do it because I'm a bad boy.
Oh.
So if you've seen other people do it, then I feel less like a bad boy.
Yeah, I do know it's decently common in like metal or like.
Oh,
things like that.
okay. Yeah. Like with heavier music. Yeah. For sure. We were talking before recording the episode with that point, was specifically the idea of like, there's a difference between completely replacing a snare and supplementing it by duplicating it and then triggering the duplicate and blending it in to use it more of like an EQ.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, it's adding to it.
There's different.
Yeah. One in particular that I saw you do, which made perfect sense as to why, is the kick they had like a whoop, like before the kick hit. Do you remember that one?
That's a lot of them, actually.
Yeah, and so like pretty much what you did is when you blended in the other sample, you kind of took out the whoop with it.
Yeah, it's like there's a lot of kick drums where the sub frequencies are delayed, so it's like boom whoop,
Yeah.
boom whoop. So it's like transient, and then like a couple milliseconds later is the sub filling it up, which is like that's pretty normal, but sometimes that can kind of kill the transient.
Yeah.
So in order to maintain that punch, I try to get those sub frequencies to hit all at the same time.
Yeah, and if you are planning on like completely replacing it, depending on how different it makes it sound, it might be good to reach out to the artist just to make sure you're not completely changing the sound if they want that specific sound.
Yeah, that's definitely based on the relationship with the artist or the producer.
Yeah. So that's something to be cautious with, but just know it is an option.
Well, to replace it, you should ask, but to supplement it, I think it's okay as long as it's not like obvious. Like, think about it like EQ.
Yeah.
I'm not going to ask the producer if I can EQ their kick drum.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's just something like that. Like, so yeah, be cautious with it, but know that it's an option. Especially if you have a good relationship, I feel like they'll let you do it.
That's actually pretty useful. I feel like I use supplemental Trigger. Like Trigger is definitely a plugin that I use quite often, like Slate Trigger. And I keep a sample pack of one-shot drums that I keep, toms too. I think even the Slate default ones can sound good.
Yeah.
I think they sound a little bit creepy, like, anyway. But I do think that they sound better than anything stock Logic drums. So just using those as supplemental, yeah, it's pretty common. I like that a lot. That's pretty practical.
Yeah. Do you have a process for like when you switch it out to make sure it's not like
if I can't
the pitch of it is like on or off?
Oh, no. Sometimes I mess with the tuning a little bit, but I don't overthink that.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think putting the kick drum to the tune of the song is a make or break mix move.
Yeah, I just know again going back to like Colin Britton, he'll like, because he is replacing like a live drum kit, so like when he replaces the sample, he does this thing on Pro Q where you could like freeze it and it'll show you the fundamental note just to make sure that like the sample he's replacing it with is the same note as the same fundamental as like the
so
other kick.
the risk with that is that if the bass is playing and they're in the same fundamental, they're hitting the one quite often. Like the bass player is hitting one, the bass, the root note quite often. And if you match the kick drum, you're actually literally competing with the bass more. So if you get it in an in-between frequency where it's not in the key, you actually conflict with the bass less. So that's something to think about as well. So that's why I don't overthink it.
Yeah.
Like if it sounds good, it sounds good.
Yeah.
I've heard a lot of people say that they like, pull out frequencies or push in frequencies or try to match the thing. I don't think that that's a make or break mix move. But it is a cool option.
Yeah.
Very
situational.
Yeah. But yeah, I like that. That's a really good practical thing. I don't ever think to teach that sort of stuff. Yeah. Don't be afraid to replace or supplement samples. I've also, in the opposite sense, you know what I've done? DK, how'd you get the kick drum to hit so damn hard? Well, here's the thing. You had like 9 kick drums stacked, and I deleted 8 of them. That's how I got the kick drum to hit so hard.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you know when to mute it.
Yeah. So it's like, that's not the save all, but it's the idea, like, you know, like, again, being in tune with what sounds good is going to help you be better than doing something because someone told you that it's good.
Yeah, these are like good tools to have and to try, and if it sounds better, go with it. If not, like, figure something else out.
By the way, that in-between thing, the only time that I could think of where, like, so with like EDM music, sometimes the kick drum is like pitched. Because like with most kick drums or snares, like snares sometimes have like a fundamental pitch, but most of the time it's like a splat.
Yeah.
But like if there's an EDM kick drum, which is just like an 808, like a very short 808, like if it's really obvious, I might tune it.
Yeah.
And then saturate it with third order harmonics to try to get the in-betweens that way.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But that's again, that's based on the song.
Yeah,
okay.
Situational again, yeah.
So that's number 2. I think that's really awesome. Number 3, which is coming from me, this is from Bob Horn. I love Bob Horn, and I think he's an awesome human being. Shout out to you, Bob. And on top of that, I think his mixes sound great. I think his low end sounds amazing. Something that I learned from him is that there's a part of me that, like, engineers kind of do this thing like a dick measuring competition where they're like, can you hear this? And it's like, we're listening for dither, and like everybody's like, yeah, I can hear that. But like, I'm sitting there going like, I can't fucking hear that. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Like, especially not in a room that I'm unfamiliar with, on speakers that I'm unfamiliar with, like in an angle, like me not in the sweet spot. Like, I'm not fucking hearing that.
Yeah.
You know, and it's crazy that people have the ego. Engineers have the ego and pretend like they hear something. And it turns out that the plugin that they were messing with, that everybody said that the sound was better, it was bypassed the entire time. You know, I fucking hate that. But that being said, I've seen, like, watching Bob Horn mix, he does things that are very small and subtle, but can change the feel. So the idea of, because I'm pretty abrasive with my mixing, like I am just like brash, big moves all the time, big moves. But I'm afraid that if I like really focus on the super minute details, then I start to overthink things. And going back to my first point, Bob does a really good job of kind of doing small, subtle moves and not overthinking it. Because you can really hear the difference. Like, he'll pull out this frequency in the bass, which lets the kick drum, you can hear the kick drum come out a little bit more, or vice versa. Pull it out of the kick drum or boost it in the kick drum, whatever, and you can hear it. And he's got the tightest, out of anybody that I've ever heard mix, he's always got the tightest low end. He's got really tight, controlled low end. And same thing, like, he spends a lot of time, like, I know I talk about mixing fast. He does not mix as fast. But it's very controlled, and he's somehow able to stay focused and somehow able to stay subjective, takes lots of breaks. And he's like almost the opposite of the type of mixer that I am. And I was like, I loved watching that and to learn that from him. And it kind of, I don't know what the point I'm trying to make here, but the point, like, it's like the importance of intentional small moves and how that can affect the mix.
Yeah, like, it doesn't always have to be a big move kind of thing. I know what you're talking about too. He's either him or his assistant talked about it on a podcast, but like something about like he'll do that small, very small, like cut out some frequencies in the low end, and it will just like open up everything else. So yeah, I get what you're saying. I'm trying to think of a good way to put it too, but it's a very almost again like having the kind of the confidence in your ear to just like you could trust that like this you could trust that this little move will make it sound better, and that you don't have to go over the top sometimes.
Yeah, that takes a lot of skill to do that, and because like again, I would recommend that people not to do. I think people do that too much.
Yeah.
But Bob does it in a way where it's like he's doing it on purpose.
Yeah.
So it's like it's a level beyond, because like most people hyper focus on the details too much, and they're not really making it better. So I recommend to don't overthink it, right? To mix fast, to do big abrasive moves. But then he takes it like the next level beyond that is to like small, subtle, on purpose moves and bring it back to that sort of like baseline level. And he does a really great job. But he's also not like super complicated like Andrew Sheps. So he's still not quite Andrew Sheps level, who's like known for paralleling everything and like having the most crazy unique workflows in Pro Tools.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's something that I appreciate as well. So coming back, so as much as I think that like not overthinking is important, Bob taught me to kind of bring it back down and to, if something needs it, it needs it. And it's okay to spend time on it.
Yeah. To get the little details and stuff. Yeah. I can't really think of more on that. That's pretty straightforward. Yeah. Let's see. I have the next point. And I'm trying to think of the best way to put this in words too. It kind of relates to what you said. Is controlling the low end in terms of I feel like when I first came out here, one of my biggest weaknesses was in my low end, and it was kind of wonky. I think in watching again both you and Lou, I'm trying to think of the best way to put it, but like you guys seem to put an effort in making sure the low end is consistent and like controlled.
Controlled is a good word for good low end.
Yeah, like you said you don't use multiband EQ, but you'll like pretty much do some heavy compression sometimes on the low end or things like that to keep it in control.
Yeah, or multiband compression. I don't use multiband compression.
Yeah.
Very rarely.
Yeah, and like since I've kind of started applying those things and really focusing on like, okay, how can I make the low end stay where it's at and like not go all whoa and things like that, I feel like my mixes have like been able to get better and even louder too, because that with the controlled low end, it's not eating up a bunch of energy and headroom when I'm going into a clipper and then a limiter. So yeah, I'm trying to think of the best way to put it, but yeah. So like, I guess to explain to everyone, like, what do you usually do to control the low end?
Are you asking me?
I'm asking you, yeah.
Oh, good question. What am I doing usually to control the low end? Compression, obviously. Potentially some narrow cut EQs. Like if some basses resonate more loud at a single note than at the other notes. Saturation, distortion to make sure, depending on the song and the needs, to make sure that if there's sub frequencies that are really low, like here's something like this is something that I only do every once in a while. But I'll duplicate if their sub bass is like an octave lower than what I know most people are ever going to hear. Yeah. So it's eating up the headroom because it's like 20 to 40 hertz of just with the root note.
Yeah.
Right, on these 808s. And what I do is I duplicate it and I turn it up an octave. And then I saturate the shit out of that and cut out the low end of that. And I blend that in a little bit to make sure that like, if we're eating the headroom, I'm going to make sure that it's heard a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, some things like that, depending on the song. Yeah, it's not, I wonder if it's not so much about the techniques that we use, but rather I like the idea of like controlled low end.
Yeah, I think I like
the importance of low end, yeah.
At least from it seems like watching you do it, it's something I've kind of started doing with my mixes too, is taking that time in the very beginning of the mix to like focus on getting the low end right.
Oh,
and
right.
I feel like that clears it up when you're starting to add in other elements. It helps kind of already give reference to like, okay, this space is already under control, and it kind of helps you with the rest of the mix style things in.
I mean, you know that I believe sincerely that you should mix the bass first. mean, the idea that like most people mix with the drums first. They start with the kick drum, they go to the snare, they have the toms, they go to the overheads, the room, whatever, and then they get to the bass.
Yeah.
But it's like you have so much time to forget what the kick drum sounds like.
Yeah.
When the most important part is the kick drum and the bass. So I just do bass and then immediately go into the kick drum.
That's what I
make
do
sure those
too,
two
yeah.
things are done first, so the foundation is solid. Because like the low end can totally ruin a mix, or like can make the song quiet, can make the song feel off. Low end is important, especially with like modern music.
Yeah.
Less so in like rock, where it's like there's not as much low end or it's not as vital.
Yeah.
But with like modern pop kind of stuff, low end is very crucial. So it's got to be controlled. It can be a lot. You can have a lot of low end, but it's got to be controlled. It can't be floppy.
Yeah, I think floppy is another good word too. Yeah. Finding, and I think that's like, and again, I think that's why like that little, whatever Bob Horton does when he cuts out those low ends and it opens things up, is he probably takes out that little bit of floppiness. But yeah, I feel like if you once you start getting your low end under control, I feel like it'll right off the bat make your mixes overall louder, just because it's not eating up a lot of headroom. But yeah, I feel like that was like a pretty big difference I've like noticed when coming out here, noticing
On a personal
you guys.
level,
Yeah, on a personal level.
I mean, it is LA where like we basically push the envelope on low end out here.
Yeah.
Say Nashville pushing the envelope and creating the culture of low end. It might be Atlanta, but it's LA or Atlanta.
Yeah. And it still sounds loud. Like that's the thing. It sounds, you can make the low end sound loud, but like if it controlled at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true. Intentional as well is another adjective to or like word to use there. Okay, my last thing, number 5. This is something that I learned from a local dude, someone an amateur as far as career wise, but I respect him so damn much, and I've talked about him so damn much. He kind of changed my perspective on many different things. He's like one of the most talented producers I've ever had the pleasure of working with. His name is Nels, and I've had him on the show before as well. He's out in Utah. What up, Nels? I learned from him the importance of effects, reverbs, delays, even tremolo, panning, automation, contrast, intentional contrast from the production, and then arrangement in general, and how important that is. Like I still to this day, like, I mean, obviously it's this is not like a final answer, but I think that arrangement is more important than mixing. That if the arrangement isn't thoughtful, and if you just put a bunch of mid-range instruments, and you just have a bunch of Wurlitzers and a bunch of Rhodes and a bunch of like guitars with a bunch of mid-range, like there's only so much that mixing can do. So it's about like you got to have thoughtful arrangement. He made that very clear for me. I think he still to this day has like some of the best use of reverbs, tremolo, delay that I've ever heard in my goddamn life. Like, and he is so good at it. And one of the things that makes him so good is the contrast. He will use a delay for one word in a 5-minute song, and you will never hear that same delay ever again.
Interesting.
And it's just like, what?
Yeah.
And like he'll take the time to make sure that there's contrast. He is so good at having money moments where it's just like ear candy, just placing small ear candy. I don't think that makes or breaks a song, but it just elevates a song to like such a high level. And how that affects me as a mixer, I know he's not a mixer, this is like not a mix thing, but how that affects me as a mixer is like, you'll notice there's like a classic DK move is one, rarely ever do I do blanket reverbs. Even if I'm mixing a song fucking fast, I'll still take a moment to like automate that reverb send from verse to chorus. And the classic thing that I love to do is like I'll like hyper emphasize and automate the reverb to be loud towards the end of the pre-chorus, and then the final bar of the pre-chorus I'll make it fucking dry. No reverb, no echo, no delay, and then that reverb explodes again in the chorus.
Yeah.
Like that's That's something, and I'm like not afraid to have like a really bright, harsh reverb because of Nels. Like Nels is like, if you've seen my Valhalla vintage reverb, like they're really harsh, bright reverbs that it's like they stand out. Like it's not a background thing to make sure that you have this like this feeling of sensation of space. No, a reverb is an instrument. Like he will literally make samples out of reverbs, and it's like this. When it comes to my effects game, which I think that my effects game is all right. Like I don't think I'm the best in the world, but he really put me on to at least being thoughtful about it. First step, being thoughtful about it and doing it intentionally, doing a lot of automation and being okay using a reverb or like a delay throw or like weird things like tremolo or like different things that you've never used within your plugins, like weird modulation tools that you've never used, using it sparsely, like being okay with using it only once in the song, trying out different ideas, and like building contrast with that has definitely affected my mixing, and I think that is one of the coolest things. Dude, you got to listen to anything he bro has like 15 monthly listeners, and it is just so incredibly talented. I love his songs to death. I think he's just opened up a door for me. Like, I think and now, like, I can't listen to mixes where there is a blanket reverb or a blanket delay. I think it sounds cheap. Sounds cheap and low effort.
Yeah.
And, like, how do you make, and going on about this, like, I do feel like automation is one of the ways to make a record feel like you spent time on it.
Oh, yeah.
Like, to make it feel expensive, like, to make something feel expensive, you have to make it, like, think of, like, Mr. Beast. Or like a YouTube creator. You can tell when it feels like someone took effort to make that video. It doesn't actually have to take effort, but you can get good at making it feel like you took effort. I think automating is one of those things as well. Like to convey that feeling of like, this sounds fucking expensive because there's so much contrast and there's so many small things that aren't repeated.
Yeah. Like even little delay throws here or there could like, it could bring it up. Yeah.
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 I think it's a big deal, and you don't want to force it.
Yeah.
But I think that kind of changed the game for me as far as like how I think about effects.
Yeah, something I think you mentioned in the beginning of talking about him too is the arrangement in terms of having the instruments kind of more properly fill out the frequency spectrum. I think that's someone else who I think does that well is Mike McClellan, who you work with.
Oh, great producer.
I've seen his stems before and how they sound unmixed, and they already sound amazing unmixed. And I think a big part of that is that he knows how to produce and how to fill out everything so that like everything still has its place, and they're not like, you don't have like 8 guitars that are doing the same thing stacked in like, one
he
spot.
is so tasteful.
Yeah, he knows how to do it.
He doesn't put a guitar there because you can put a guitar there.
Yeah.
He only does it if it's absolutely necessary.
Yeah, it just feels balanced like right off the bat. And so I think that helps the mix even be better.
Every great producer that I've ever worked with, whether it's trap or full big band funk, right? Every great producer knows when too much is too much. They're very intentional with when they put things there. Good with ear candy. Again, the contrast, the purposeful placement, and not just easily repeated for the sake of repetition.
Yeah.
Or like, I know how to play guitar, or I know how to play the Rhodes here, and it'd be cool to just add a Rhodes here to show off that I can play Rhodes. No. It's so intentional.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you don't have to mix it because the arrangement itself is already mixed.
Yeah. And at that point, I feel like it does, because sometimes when mixing, it could sometimes feel like you're fixing then enhancing. But I feel like with a producer who knows how to record it right, it's nice because then you're just enhancing the song.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And with recordings, like for example, like with funk or rock, where it's like a drummer, like a proper drummer, and you're not replacing with samples, the drummer itself needs to feel that as well. I mean, it's eventually the producer's fault because like the producer's going to be in charge, just like a director of a film. Like, hey, can you hit the kick drum harder during the chorus? Can you be a little softer on the cymbals during this part here? Can you change up the pattern a little bit? Like it's at the end of the day, it's the producer's choice. But the drummer having the ability to do that. Because I've met some drummers that they're like metronomes. They can be on time, but they're horrible drummers because they only know one dynamic, which is loud.
Yeah.
And so like that's difficult to work with. But yeah, dude, Mike is such a good job. And one easy way of doing this in a trap, like, so I think like trap is a good example of talking about arrangement because it's really simple. Having a different kick drum for the kick versus the verse. Like that's a common trap arrangement thing that can really change the vibe of a song.
Yeah.
And it can appropriately lower the intensity during the verses so it can properly explode in the chorus if that's what the intention is.
Yeah.
Like changing the tone of the 808. So it's like I don't have to mix much if I have two different 808 tracks and one is for the verses and one is for the chorus and they feel different, so I don't have to automate anything.
Yeah.
It's different for a rock band because like what are you going to do? Just play the guitar louder in the chorus? Like that's why pedals are so good for guitar players because they can change the tone for different parts of the sound. Like you're arranging the song with the tools. You can play louder, you can double up guitars, you can play an acoustic. If you're recording, you can play an acoustic guitar versus an electric guitar, you can have a clean guitar versus a dirty guitar. Again, use a boost. These are all the arrangement is... Imagine if it was the mixer's job to make sure that your guitar is loud enough during the guitar solo.
Yeah.
Like, he's going to miss it half the times.
Yeah. Like,
so if you did half the work, it's going to make the mix sound better.
I'm trying to remember it. I feel so bad. He used to work at the studio. I was talking to him at the mixer last week. And he works a lot in like Spanish guitar kind of genre. And I was just asking him from a mixing perspective how it works. Because like he said it's usually just 4 guitars playing and stuff. And a big part of it is that just in the way that it's arranged, it takes up everything. So even though it's only guitars being played, they're playing different parts of the guitar. Or they're only playing high guitar on one track and then like different kind of guitar on the other.
Are you talking about like recording a mariachi band?
I'm trying to remember I don't remember specifically.
Because, like,
the genre.
for example, like in a mariachi band or like a string quartet, you have a cello, which takes up different frequencies than the viola, which takes up different frequencies from the first and second violin.
Yeah.
The first violin is playing higher notes, usually playing the melody.
Yeah.
The violin, the second violin is playing like harmony. So it's like it's automatically being arranged, so it's not conflicting with each other. You can hear the cello clearly.
Yeah. It's kind of like Junior H. He's like a Spanish artist kind of vibe. But yeah, it's like even with like just a few of the same instruments, they were still conscious of making sure it's not just a bunch of guitars playing, but that it fills out the space.
Yeah, that's super duper important. I do, again, like arrangement, everything. Nels is also the same dude that mixes on his wired Apple headphones, and he can outmix most people. He's a producer, not a mixer, using Apple earbuds because that's what he listens to most. He's like really used to them.
Yeah,
and he can outmix most other producers I've met.
Respect.
He's so talented. Yeah, so shout out to Nels. I can only speak highly of him. Yeah. That's it that's 5 things for us.
That was a good convo.
It's a good episode there. What are the takeaways here? 1, don't overthink it. 2, don't be afraid to adjust the drums. You know, and make sure that the song is hitting in a way that you want, that the artist wants. Number 3, as much as you don't overthink it, don't be afraid to get detailed work in. Number 4 was, what was yours again?
Low end. Control your low end.
Control your low end. Taking the time to control your low end. Number 5, contrast, effects, and arrangement.
I think a lot of these have the overarching theme of taking the time.
Which is so funny because at the same time, like, if you're taking too much time, my number 1 thing was don't take too much time.
Yeah.
So, I do feel like if the producer and the producer takes the time, the song artist takes the time and to do the work, then it's less important for the mixer to take the time.
Yeah.
And it's like you don't want to let the mixer take too much time. I think that's like a good goal to have. Like if you're a producer that is relying too heavily on the mixer, like it's not going to be as good as a mix.
Yeah.
No matter how good the mixer is.
Produce so well that like the mixer gets to just focus on enhancing your song and they don't have to fix anything.
Yeah. As a mixer, I think it's not the best to spend too much time on something. As a producer, I think it is your job to overthink it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the mixer's job is to remind you, like, hey, you don't need to. You did a good job.
Yeah.
That's in every scenario that I've worked in and people that I've talked to, that always ends up making the best products. Like the songs that people are most proud of, it's the one where the producer, even if he was in the zone, in flow state, and didn't spend that much time on it because they was feeling everything, like took the time to alleviate the pressure from the mixer's job, and the mixer like barely had to do anything. Like those are the ones that like in all parties are like the happiest with. So maybe this episode is about putting the pressure back onto the producer, and to like, as much as I think mixing is important, I don't think it's half as important as like a good producer.
Yeah, it's a good indicator that like the higher you get up, the mixers do less. Because the producers do a lot.
Yeah.
So I guess that's kind of a good indicator of how professional you're being with it.
Yeah. There's something to be said as well. It's like usually producers at various different levels, top or bottom, it's there's not always a budget for producers, because you can give away percentage of songwriting or whatever. But there's almost always a budget for mixers. You don't send out a song without getting it mixed. That's so whatever. Take that as you will. All right. On that note, thank you so much for listening. Check out the exclusive episodes. You want to pitch the exclusive episodes real quick?
Yes, on the exclusive episodes, we talk about things a lot more technical. At the moment, it's DK, Braden, and I. And then by the end of the year, it'll just be DK and I. And we take clips from famous, well-known mixers, and we kind of break them down and talk about more specifics. Like we'll talk about sometimes very specific things like settings that we'll do sometimes, or it could sometimes be more broad. But yeah, if you're looking for more specific technical tips, that's the good place to go.
Awesome. Again, mixingmusicpodcast.com/exclusive to get access to those episodes. $4 a month or $40 a year. Thank you for all of our subscribers. If you haven't already, if you've gotten any sort of benefit from listening to this podcast, free way you can support us is rate the podcast 5 stars. Appreciate it. Just say a couple sentences. We see those numbers going up. We see the comments. We love it. That's free support, and appreciate y'all.
Yeah, we love all of you.
Yeah,
especially you, Jonathan.
Especially who the fuck is Jonathan?
I don't know, but there's someone out there who's like, oh,
there's a dude named Jonathan out there listening right now. Thank you, Jonathan.
Yeah.
Alrighty. On that note, happy mixing, my friends, and stay saucy. Woo.
Awesome. That was fun. Oh.
What was that about?
Oh, those were 5. What was it? It was like 5. It's like 5 things learned, 5 mix tips from watching professionals, or something like that.
Got it.
Cool. Awesome.
All right, I'm gonna edit those down and start releasing those.
Cool.
Thanks so much for watching. Have a great week. Everybody have a great Monday.
Oh, wait,
have a great week.
I think someone wanted to do a Q&A question.
It's all about conveying. No, it's all right.
Okay.
Stream. Thanks for coming and stopping by, Drew. It's all about conveying a feeling. It's underestimated what sound design can do. Facts.
It's true. It's so true.
Facts. All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a great week. Peace.